They promise you that vulnerability is strength, that if you open your heart wide, share your deepest truths, wear your emotions like badges of honor, the universe will reward your authenticity. But Machiavelli didn't see vulnerability as courage. He saw it as tactical suicide, a fortress with its gates thrown open, an army marching without armor. The warrior who broadcasts his weaknesses will be conquered by them. The one who guards his center survives, not because openness is wrong, but because it's reckless and the battlefield is real. Where transparency begins, strategy dies. You trust your colleagues, your inner circle, your romantic partner. You share your insecurities. You reveal your plans early. You forgive their mistakes before they've even apologized. And why? Because vulnerability strips away your defenses. You stop calculating risks. You stop protecting your position. You assume that because you would never weaponize their secrets, they'd never weaponize yours. But Machiavelli would shake his head at such naivety. He understood that even your most trusted allies will sacrifice you if the price is right, especially when they know you won't strike back. The real threat isn't your obvious enemies, it's intimacy itself. Your competitors respect your mystery, but the people you've let inside, they grow comfortable with your weaknesses, with your patterns, with your predictable responses. Over time, they expect your support without earning it, demand your forgiveness without changing, react with outrage when you finally establish limits. Because vulnerability, when uncontrolled, transforms you into a resource, not always maliciously, but inevitably. Machiavelli didn't advocate for complete isolation. He believed in strategic revelation. You share with intention, with limits, with escape routes planned. Because without boundaries, vulnerability becomes emotional hemorrhaging. And emotional hemorrhaging is the fastest way for a powerful person to lose everything they've built. Listen, to be strategically guarded isn't to be heartless, it's to be awake. Awake to how people change when they know too much. Awake to what you sacrifice when you become too emotionally available. Awake to what vulnerability becomes when it goes unchecked. Exploitation. Machiavelli grasped something most never will. The people who claim to love your authenticity will still wound you carelessly, and those who stay close only for what you provide will wound you deliberately. So the answer isn't to become a hermit. It's to stop leading with your soft spots exposed. The instant you lead with raw emotion, you surrender your advantage. Ever notice why your advice gets ignored by your team? Why your friends disappear after they get what they need? Why your partner doesn't worry about losing you? Because they've learned your heart overrules your head. They know you'll apologize first. You'll return. You'll explain yourself. You'll defend your feelings. You'll never follow through on consequences. And that makes you manageable, soft, safe to disregard. Machiavelli warned us, it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But with those closest to you, being strategic feels manipulative, so you abandon the game entirely, and they start winning by default. Here's what happens. When you stay too open, you will compromise your standards, accept treatment you'd never tolerate from strangers, forgive without requiring change, stay quiet to avoid conflict. But the peace you're preserving is just everyone else's comfort with your weakness. And when someone grows comfortable with your weakness, they will probe it, then push it, then profit from it. You don't need to become emotionally unavailable. You just need to make your emotional availability conditional and earned. Let them see your warmth, but never without walls protecting it. Because the moment your vulnerability becomes unlimited, watch out for these 5 red flags. Red flag number 1. The assumption trap. They stop asking permission, stop expressing gratitude, stop considering your limits. Why? Because in their mental ledger, you're already committed. They believe you'll always help, always show up, always say yes. And the moment you hesitate, You're suddenly selfish. You've changed. You're being difficult. But Machiavelli would observe, that's just the sound of someone mourning their lost advantage. Red flag number 2, the guilt weapon. You establish a boundary. They become emotional. You decline a request. They reference your history together. You protect your time. They label you distant. It's no longer communication. It's manipulation. Because they've discovered that if they can make you feel guilty, they can reverse any decision you make. And if you cave to guilt once, they'll deploy it again. That's not love. That's emotional extortion. And if you can't maintain your position when guilt enters the conversation, you never had a real position to begin with. Red flag number 3, the one-way street. You've been consistent, supportive, reliable. But when you're the only one maintaining that standard, it becomes expected rather than appreciated. They stop reciprocating, stop checking in, start appearing only when it benefits them. And when you finally step back, they panic. Not because they value you, but because they just lost their emotional safety net. Machiavelli would remind you, if your loyalty is guaranteed, it will be exploited before it's valued. Red flag number 4, the exception request. This pattern is insidious. It begins small. Can you handle this? Can you skip that for me? Can you overlook this mistake? Just this once. But the moment you bend, it's never just once. You become the person who can be moved because you've demonstrated you won't break completely. They now understand you'll compromise your principles as long as they maintain proximity. That's not affection. That's strategic pressure testing. Red flag number 5, the harshness accusation. You communicate directly. You're being cold. You create distance. You're being cruel. You stop being endlessly patient. Now you're heartless. This is how they reframe your strength as character flaws. But the reality, they don't miss your warmth. They miss access to the version of you who absorbed their chaos without consequences. And now that version is gone, so they call your evolution cruelty. But it's actually clarity. This is exactly what Machiavelli predicted. He would say, the closer someone positions themselves to you, the more they expect you to absorb their dysfunction. And when you refuse, they'll call you changed. They'll say you're different. They'll frame your growth as betrayal. Let them. Because the person who fears disappointing everyone he trusts ends up surrounded by people who trust how easily they can disappoint him. So, here's what you do. Instead, stop justifying your boundaries. You don't need to explain your need for space, defend your emotional distance, or apologize for outgrowing systems that no longer serve you. You simply enforce quietly, consistently, without flinching. Let the accusations flow. Let the discomfort rise. Because once they realize the old version of you is gone, they either adapt or you release them. And either outcome strengthens your position. Being strategically guarded isn't about shutting down your heart. It's about protecting your power with precision, especially from those who assume you'll never use it to defend yourself. Because if you don't guard your emotional core, you become the dumping ground for everyone else's chaos. Machiavelli didn't build walls to exclude people. He built filters to test who deserved entry. And once inside, no one remained without continuous proof of worthiness. The 5 principles that will change everything. Principle 1. Never justify your emotional distance. You owe no explanation for needing space, going quiet, declining requests, or stepping back from toxic patterns. The more you explain, the more ammunition you provide. Machiavelli would say, to explain is to invite negotiation. To act without permission is to demonstrate strength. So, when someone asks, why are you acting different? What happened between us? Why didn't you call? You don't argue. You don't unload your reasoning. You simply say, I'm recalibrating. And that silence, that refusal to emotionally bleed for their comfort, either commands respect or reveals who was never capable of giving it. Principle 2. Establish consequences, not conditions. Most people set conditions. Don't speak to me that way again. If you do this, I'll be upset. Please don't disrespect me. But Machiavelli would never beg for better treatment. He designed systems that made disrespect costly. You don't say, "Don't do that." You demonstrate. When you do that, I disappear. And you don't return when they panic. You return when you choose, if ever. Boundaries don't plead, they act. That's how they earn authority. Principle 3. Never negotiate through emotion. Once someone learns you cry under pressure, panic when ignored, rush to repair when they go silent, they stop engaging your intellect and start manipulating your emotions. Machiavelli would never permit this because emotional clarity is armor. And once that armor is pierced, opponents no longer aim for your mind. They target your wounds. You protect yourself by remaining unreadable under pressure. No lengthy texts. No "I just feel like" moments. No impulsive re-engagement after being hurt. Your silence becomes your leverage. Your stillness becomes your statement. And if they want your softness back, they'll have to earn it again. Principle 4. Define your standards and never waver. Most people have boundaries that shift based on who's asking, how long they've known them, how emotionally exhausted they are. That's weakness. That's emotional currency devaluation, and it destroys your worth. You need absolute rules. I don't respond to yelling. Once I create space, it remains until I choose to close it. I don't reward apologies without behavioral change. Then you follow through without exception. People don't test what's consistently enforced. They test what's flexible. Machiavelli didn't punish frequently, but when he did, it was precise, cold, final. You must operate the same way, or they'll keep gambling with your forgiveness. Principle 5. Don't fear being labeled harsh. This is where most people collapse. They recognize they're being used. They know their peace is being disturbed. But the moment they enforce boundaries, guilt creeps in. Because society programs you. If you're not endlessly patient, you're cruel. If you don't explain yourself, you're arrogant. If you don't let them back in, you're unforgiving. But Machiavelli didn't fear being called ruthless. He feared being called easy. And you should adopt the same mindset. Let them label you however they need to. Let them rewrite your character to match their pain. Because when you fear reputation more than reality, you trade power for perception. And perception changes nothing. You're not being cold. You're being uncompromising. Vulnerability without boundaries becomes sacrifice, and sacrifice without recognition becomes servitude. Machiavelli would never die on someone else's emotional battlefield. He'd observe, withdraw, return when respected. That's not being heartless. That's being in control. But wait, what if you become too cold? This is where most people hesitate. They worry. But I don't want to lose my humanity. I don't want to become disconnected. I'm afraid if I become too guarded, I won't find my way back. That fear is valid, but it stems from confusing strategic thinking with emotional shutdown. Machiavelli didn't lose his humanity. He mastered when and how to deploy it. Because in his world, and yours, feeling everything means being controlled by everything. Strategic guarding isn't cruelty. It's control. You don't stop feeling. You stop reacting emotionally when your position demands calculation. You still love, care, connect, reflect, but only within the fortress you've constructed. Walls that prevent you from becoming another piece in someone else's emotional chess game. Being strategically guarded doesn't mean you lack warmth. It means you choose when to activate that warmth and for whom. That's not emotional absence. That's emotional intelligence. Start with this mental shift control begins with how you process hurt internally. When someone disrespects you, you don't react, you calculate. When someone lies to you, you don't spiral, you observe. When someone withdraws, you don't chase, you interpret. This internal dialogue changes everything. You shift from, "Why did they do this to me?" to, "What did this just teach me about them?" Machiavelli would take betrayal and ask, "What can I extract from this moment that makes me stronger?" Because the strategic thinker sees pain as positioning, not personal loss. Master the power of silence. You know what intimidates people most? Not anger, not shouting, not revenge. It's the person who witnesses betrayal and says nothing. They wait, they distance, they remove access, not with fury, but with indifference. Because when you react immediately, you're not dangerous, you're predictable. Machiavelli didn't act on impulse, he acted on advantage. He taught us that power isn't having the strongest emotion, it's having the strongest timing. Turn pain into intelligence. Every time you feel disrespected, disappointed, replaced, you have two choices. Take it personally or convert it into intelligence. The strategic mind doesn't mourn what it lost. It catalogs who's capable of losing you and adjusts access accordingly. It transforms pain into clarity, distance into power, loss into evolution. Because when you're emotionally reactive, you give others control over your interpretation of reality. But when you absorb quietly, you become the person no one wants to cross twice. Build your emotional fortress. You don't have to close your heart. You have to protect it with a system. Most people love like it's war, but enter unarmed. They think, "I'll give them everything. I'll love them through their worst. They'll return when they realize." But Machiavelli knew hope isn't strategy, and kindness without discipline is disguised suicide. So you don't seal your heart, you build a gate. And behind that gate is a rule. Only those who demonstrate consistency earn my vulnerability, because your warmth must be earned, not assumed, and your care must be conditional, not because you're cruel, but because you're valuable. Accept this hard truth. You must accept being misunderstood. This is what prevents most from stepping into true power. They want to be strategic, but also liked. They want respect, but also want to remain nice. And Machiavelli would say, if you need others to approve of your evolution, you've already surrendered the freedom to evolve. You will be called cold. You will be seen as detached. You will lose people who loved the version of you who always bled on command. Let them leave, because their discomfort isn't your problem. It's their loss of access to the old you, and the old you was easy to wound. Find the middle path. This is also called strategic empathy. Being strategically guarded doesn't mean heartless. Detached doesn't mean disconnected. Strong doesn't mean selfish. But that's what they'll claim the moment you stop overgiving, over-explaining, over-loving. Suddenly you're too much, too sharp, too different. And that's where most people fail. They either stay soft and get exploited, or go hard and lose themselves. Machiavelli walked a middle path, the path of strategic empathy. The first step is define your intention, not their perception. Ask yourself, am I setting boundaries to hurt them or protect myself? Am I creating distance because I'm cold or because I'm being drained? Am I silent because I'm passive-aggressive or because I've already communicated enough? If your answer is self-protection, not retaliation, you're on the right path. Machiavelli didn't care about appearing noble. He cared about maintaining position. And people who maintain position without cruelty are rare. That's your role now. Step 2. Show mercy without losing your stance. There's nothing wrong with giving someone another opportunity, being kind without being naive, helping someone you've distanced yourself from if they've shown genuine growth. The danger lies not in the mercy, but in forgetting why you created distance initially. So, when you give, don't lower the standard. Don't erase the consequence. Don't return without terms. You can offer softness, but not surrender. That's the balance. Step 3. Control your presence, not just your distance. People think withdrawal equals power, but Machiavelli knew your presence, when controlled, is far more influential. You appear briefly, speak with clarity, exit while they still feel your absence. You become the reminder, not the enemy, not the emotional wreck, not the drama, the calm, the person who's always thinking 3 moves ahead. The one who left without chaos but changed the room's energy just by exiting. That's authority without aggression. Step 4. Maintain standards, not control. You can't force people to respect you. You can only make disrespect expensive. That means you don't demand apologies. You don't force communication. You don't make people understand. You withdraw access. You remove emotional privileges. You let the silence calculate for them. And if they rise to meet your standard, you re-engage. If not, they never belonged beside your evolution anyway. Step 5. Let your kindness become selective, not exhausted. You don't stop being kind. You stop being careless with your kindness. You give it slowly, after observation, with internal checkpoints, with clear exit strategies if things deteriorate. And if people call it transactional, let them. Because unconditional giving sounds noble until it's weaponized against your peace, you now give only what aligns with your vision, energy, and emotional health. That's not selfish, that's self-command. Step 6. Don't defend your boundaries, enforce them. If they call you cold, say you're distant, accuse you of changing, say nothing. You don't need to debate your transformation. You just keep moving forward, because power isn't proven through conversation. It's revealed through consistency. And if they miss the old you, let them remember. But they don't get access to the evolved you until they prove they've outgrown the old version of themselves, too. Now, here's how you live. This daily balance isn't a line, it's a filter. You're not meant to become stone. You're meant to become a mirror, reflecting others clearly, giving warmth only when earned, staying calm regardless of who throws the first punch. That's strategic empathy, calculated, conditional, and unwavering in its boundaries. You've learned the warnings. You've seen the patterns. You've outgrown the version of yourself that was too open to be safe. Now, the final step isn't theory. It's lifestyle. Machiavelli didn't theorize power. He embodied it. And if you want to remain strategically guarded in a world that constantly pressures you to shrink back into emotional servitude, you need rules, rituals, repetition. This is how you make your boundaries permanent without ever needing to announce them again. This should be your 5 daily practices. Practice 1. Move without emotional announcement. You don't tell people, I'm cutting you off, I'm creating space, I'm focusing on myself. You just move. You slow responses. You stop over-explaining. You don't re-engage once you've withdrawn, because real boundaries don't need speeches. They're written in your consistency, not your captions. Machiavelli didn't need people to agree with his silence. He just made sure they felt it. Practice 2. Stay polite, never overfamiliar. Your warmth should not be automatic. It should be earned and maintained. Greet with composure. Compliment with purpose. Exit while still respected. This balance keeps your image disciplined and clean. Why? Because the emotionally familiar person is easy to use, but the one who stays precise is impossible to manipulate. Your strategic nature doesn't come from being harsh. It comes from being structured. Practice 3. Reflect before reacting. Someone disappoints you. You don't snap, you observe. Someone crosses your line. You don't escalate, you catalog it. Strategic guarding isn't about having no emotion. It's about never letting emotion move before thought. This pause, this internal filter, is your new edge. And when others spiral, panic, shout, or sulk, your stillness will intimidate them more than any outburst could. Practice 4. Never reopen what you closed without requalification. You left for a reason. Don't return without a new one. If you ended a friendship, relationship, partnership, let them re-earn the version of you that gave access. Too many return because they apologized. It's been a while. Maybe it'll be different. No, time doesn't heal betrayal. Standards do. And if they haven't grown, you haven't missed anything. Practice 5. Treat your peace as private strategy, not public statement. Don't turn your emotional maturity into marketing. You're not strategically guarded so people admire you. You're strategically guarded so people respect what they can't access at will. You live quietly. You protect deeply. You let the results of your self-control speak louder than any post or quote ever could. That's the strategic finish line. Total power, zero explanation. The final truth. You need to hear the warrior who guards his center while keeping his heart alive. That's the person who wins the long game. Not through cruelty, but through clarity. Not through isolation, but through intention. Not through hardness, but through wisdom. You are not becoming less human. You are becoming more strategic. And in a world that profits from your emotional chaos, that might be the most revolutionary act of all. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago, and now it's your turn to live it. Look, I know this isn't easy to hear. I know it challenges everything you've been taught about love, relationships, and being a good person. But the truth is, the world has changed. The people around you have changed. And if you don't adapt, you'll keep getting the same results. You don't have to become a monster. You just have to stop being a victim. You don't have to close your heart. You just have to guard it better. And you don't have to stop loving people. You just have to love yourself enough to set the standards they have to meet, to stay in your life. That's not cold. That's not cruel. That's survival. And in today's world, that's exactly what Machiavelli would do.